Officer! Officer! Put me down!
Your job voicing the civilians in Ready or Not. I think that's a pretty big deal. So tell me, how did that turn out to be your gig?
Thanks to one of my dear friends, Lani Minella. She suggested this one role to me, and so I recorded an audition. All you see is just lines, sometimes a bit of direction, so this is really all the things you get.
There's been a bit of a disruptions, or let's say negotiations, with SAG-AFTRA.
Video game actors have remained on strike over fears their jobs will be taken by AI.
And actors say it is far from game over.
What are your thoughts on the whole situation?
Actors are not appreciated enough, especially voice actors. Most actors actually have to be a waiter or do whatever else on the side to just be able to live from day to day.
We're fighting for our lives. You train for your career and then you wind up with a couple $100.
I think this could actually help the actors to finally make a living of the job that they love doing.
I wonder if you're more concerned about AI now than you were a year ago.
You know what? I'm not concerned at all.
Really? Okay.
I don't think it will ever be able to replicate something that we do, in my opinion, because
Ronald Hamrák is a voice actor in the video game industry. This actually is our second conversation, and in a way you can call it a year in review. A year ago, Ronald was mostly voicing characters from games made by modders, whereas now, a year later, he actually managed to get a part in a very big game called Ready or Not. It is very interesting to see the progress in his career, and we talk all about that. We also touch upon the situation with SAG-AFTRA, the negotiations and the protests that are currently happening, specifically in regards to voice actors in games and what benefits can they expect after it all finishes. All in all, it was great to catch up with Ronald and talk all things voice acting. And with that said, enjoy the episode. Ronald, it's such a pleasure to have you back on the show. Thank you so very much for this round two, sort of I mean, you could say it's a year in review because last we spoke was a year ago, practically to the day. And, you know, very happy to chat with you, very happy to connect. Now, one of the most interesting things that I want to talk about and with which I want to start the conversation is one of your new gigs, right? And that is your job at voicing the civilians in Ready or Not. I think that's a pretty big deal. Okay, Ready or Not is a huge game. I love that game. I didn't play it for a while. I did play it when it released. But now that you're in it, in the new DLC, I'll definitely, have to, replay it and try to, hear your voice there. So tell me, how did that turn out to be, your gig? How did you get it? Did you have to, I don't know, was there casting or what was it like?
Well, funny you should mention that because actually, one would say it's a big deal. To me, it was a completely new thing. I have never recorded for something like this, and I've had a small part of a civilian, which you can either encounter or not encounter. Depends, of course, on the gameplay and everything.
Right. Yeah.
Well, I got this gig thanks to one of my dear friends, Lani Minella, who has been in the industry for decades. And she is both a voice actress and a casting director, and she also directs. And so she suggested this one role to me because she's also been casting for this specific game. And so I recorded an audition. And what they really need of you for these games, or well, Ready or Not in particular, is a lot of effort sounds, a lot of screaming, screaming in agony from, I don't know, tear gas, screaming in agony from being flashbanged.
Right.
all these agony effort sounds, and these go on for 10 or more seconds. So it's really straining on your voice. Anyway, I did the audition and I sent it over to her, and the creator of the game said okay. And so maybe a month or two later, of course I was given an NDA, I think, if I remember correctly, so I signed that. I could not talk about anything. And we had a recording session over Skype. And of course Lani was there.
Interesting.
She told me that she usually wouldn't be around for the recording sessions, but as I haven't really worked on anything such of a big thing, she was there to help me with the directions.
Sorry to interrupt you. So you're saying, so you were recording the real lines for the game, and at the same time you were on Skype with Lani, right?
Yes, I was like in an actual live session with Lani and the creator of the game.
Okay. Wow.
And
that's
so
awesome.
Lani was giving me directions in case I wasn't getting something the way they envisioned, which happens all the time because, all you see is just lines. Sometimes you're given a bit of direction, like you're screaming in agony for this, or you're talking to a police officer, or, you're talking to your friend. So this is really all the things you get. And so, yeah, I was directed by Lani. The session lasted for about an hour, maybe a bit more, because I had to be helped by filing an invoice, which I have also never done. So yeah, they helped me with that, and it was an amazing experience.
Oh, that is, man, that is awesome. So, a few questions there. First of all, so, could you, for those who don't know, could you just explain to them who Lani is? Now, I did not know who she was prior to you mentioning her name when we connected a little earlier. And I did a little bit of research, and she's truly a big deal. I mean, she, had a role in World of Warcraft, right, in Mass Effect. Also, I think in The Last of Us, if I'm,
yes,
not wrong. So just who is she, and what does she do in a bit more detail so we can all understand?
A bit of information about Lani is that she is the queen of voices. That's what she is called in the industry. And yeah, like you've mentioned, she's been in The Last of Us. She's done the clicker sounds in Last of Us, the zombie sounds.
That's awesome. Oh my God.
She's been in Mortal Kombat. She's been in a couple of Half-Life games. She's done a lot of things over the years. Yeah. She is credited with over 500 titles on her resume.
My goodness.
She's been the voice of a museum. I can't remember which museum it was, but she did some voices for that. And she's been in arcade things when arcades were a thing. So really, she's been in so many things. And, you'd be surprised, but she's not getting a whole lot of work today either. But she's 72 years old. She is as healthy as she can be. She has cats to take care of. That's what she lives for.
Awesome.
And she still does a lot of directing to this day.
Wow, that's great. Well, concerning the fact that she doesn't have a lot of work currently, that's a question that we're going to get into a bit later. I'm really interested to talk to you, about kind of actors and the current state of things. But so how exactly did she find you, or why did she reach out to you? Did they find your voice, or did they see your videos, or how did that go?
Well, the story goes back to 2021 when my podcast, the Vogue podcast, was a thing, and I was constantly recording episodes for that. And so I searched her up on Facebook, I believe, or no, it was actually through her email address. And yeah, so I wanted to get an interview with her. It never really worked out because, just the differences in the time zones, and, she used to have a lot of work at the time. And yeah, that never happened really, the interview, but we became pretty close friends. And we used to talk a lot, and I've had a lot of questions for her, related to the games and the projects she did. And, she knew I was a voice actor too, I told her. And so, whenever she gets the
That's
opportunity,
awesome.
she's trying to help me out and help herself out this way. And she's trying to get me work because she
Wow.
says that I'm a talented voice actor. And, she thinks that I should be getting some work. And I really appreciate that she
I
is
agree.
trying to help me with that.
Wow, that's awesome. That's so very nice of her actually to always keep you in mind, and the fact that you became friends, is very wholesome. Although the interview didn't happen, you at least connected anyways. But did she straight away tell you that it's this big game, or did she have to just kind of tell it to you on the surface, like, look, there's this game, it's pretty big and whatnot? Or did you know that it's straight away going to be Ready or Not?
Oh, I knew what was it for because she's been working
Really?
on
Okay.
Ready or Not off and on.
Okay.
I've told you, she casts for this game, so
Okay.
she gets a lot of her people in it if she can. And so I already knew what was it gonna be, even by the time I was auditioning for it. But
Got it.
after I got the part, it was even better because Ready or Not is a pretty big game out there. I didn't know I was gonna be a part of a paid DLC, which is a downloadable content. I didn't know that. Because, it's just a civilian, so I thought maybe they're adding new maps or something to the regular game.
Yeah,
So, yeah, but I was happy to be a part of it and
that's awesome, man.
to be a part of the so-called Ready or Not family. Yeah, it feels good. It really feels good.
Yeah, that's great. No, really, I think it's a big deal. I mean, slowly but surely, right? It's last we spoke, you were working on mods and projects that are on Half-Life. Fast forward to today, and you're part of a big game. You keep saying civilian. Hey, it's it's a very necessary voice, and I think it has a place to be in the game. And you definitely did a great job. I've obviously seen the video of your recording that you sent me, and that's just really, really great to see. So I would like to kind of divert our attention a little bit towards some of the strategies that perhaps might have changed in this 1 year that we haven't spoken in terms of you finding work. Now, last year, one of the most interesting advice that you have gave, at least for me, it was very interesting, is that as an up-and-coming voice actor, it's a good idea to look at mods, right? And to look at projects that are, fairly little projects that are being done by one or two developers that, basically are them modding the game to do something cool. Those are not paid gigs most of the time, but that's how you can get your name out. And as you said, start experiencing the industry and how everything works and gaining experience, which is the most important thing. So how has that changed for you now that, well, of course you have this gig, which is Ready or Not, but there's also a few other, projects that you've been part of that we still haven't spoken about. But in general, what are the strategies that you have changed and that you're undertaking now?
Well, I have changed strategies in the way that I don't really reach out to mod makers anymore like I've used to. I've been doing this voiceover thing, if you wish, for 5 years now, doing mods and everything. And I've noticed that it hasn't really done anything to get my name out there. I've enjoyed doing them. I've enjoyed recording for every single one of them. But that's, for myself and for my comfort only. It doesn't actually help me with going forward. And now I find that people actually reach out to me sometimes, from time to time, people who have heard my voice in some mods that I have done over the years. And, it just feels good to, well,
Right.
I suppose indirectly get the recognition that you're, dying for, because as an actor, you want to make a living off of what you love doing. And actually, we can get into this later, but it's very difficult to make a living just off of acting or voice acting in general.
What do you think was the catalyst for, now people starting to actually see you, recognize you, and reach out to you? What do you think was the most important thing that pushed this sort of behavior towards your work?
Well, that's a good question because I actually don't know. I don't usually ask the people why they reach out to me. You know, if they hear something in a mod, and I assume they've liked it, because I guess they must have, they're like, maybe this is a voice that I could use for my own project, you know? And funny enough, I've worked with a mod maker, I think 2 years back, no, 3 actually. We did a project called The Apocalypse, which is a futuristic horror game. Anyway, last year he reached out to me with doing a sequel to that game, and now I'm voicing a different character. And the trailer for that actually came out a couple of days ago. And, you know, I even forgot that I did that. Because, you know, I don't keep track of the things I do anymore.
Right.
You know, voiceover is just something you do, and then you usually forget about it if you don't get reminded every now and then. So, yeah.
Interesting. Well, things have changed a lot, I see, in the way you definitely strategize your career, which is very interesting to see. I'm very interested in this question, though. Last we spoke, you said that you're not really interested in having an agent. And did that change? Are you perhaps looking into having an agent now, or it's still the same opinion?
Opinion on the agents haven't changed. Maybe in a bit indirectly, in the way that Lani now helps me with getting work sometimes, which means, you know, that she's almost as like an agent to me. She sends me auditions and I record the auditions, which I send them to her. I don't always get the job, but, you know, she still tries, and, you know, there's this right contact between the two of us, and I appreciate that for sure.
No, that's a big deal, of course, from her. But still, what's stopping you from, you know, going for it and trying to, you know, reach out to a talent agency? Why I'm asking, I'm not trying to push you to do it. I'm just trying to understand, you know, the benefits or the disadvantages of having an agent or talking to a talent agency here.
I haven't really looked on to, you know, looking for an agent, mainly because, you know, I'm located in Slovakia, in Central Europe. And since I do voiceover mainly in English and pretty much none in, you know, my native language, I think, or well, I really didn't look into it, so I can't say for sure, but I don't think there is any agencies or talent agencies over here that would be working with talent in English or in any other languages.
Interesting. And how about, say, the talent agencies that are located elsewhere, you know, the UK or USA or you know, what have you? Is it possible to reach out to them, considering the fact that you live in Slovakia, or it's best to be located at the place where the talent agency is?
For the US, I know for a fact that they require you to be a citizen of the United States and you need to live there. You need to have your SAG-AFTRA card.
Right. We spoke about that last time, yeah.
We spoke about that, yeah. And yeah, I know in the US that's a very huge requirement. And mainly, you know, all the things like video games and these things get done in the US. So I'm not sure if there'd be any opportunities for me of that sort. And you know, especially now, I've heard that it's very difficult to get a citizenship or to even travel to the US.
Well, let's get into the difficulties then, since we, you know, have touched this topic a few times. Now, obviously, there's been a bit of a, you know, disruptions, or let's say negotiations that have been ongoing with SAG-AFTRA concerning, you know, to be more specific towards games here, you know, push for better, you know, protection for, you know, people who work in voicing video games, right? Actors who work in the gaming industry.
Yeah.
Now, what are your thoughts on the whole situation? What is going on, and what could be the potential outcome of this?
I think it's a very, very good thing that the actors are doing what they're doing and trying to, you know, make their voices heard. Because, and I want to get back to this point where I was mentioning that actors need to usually do something else on the side to make a living.
Right.
Because, actors are not appreciated enough, especially voice actors. You do a gig, especially if it's a video game, and let's say it's not a franchise. You do this video game once. Let's say you get paid a couple of thousands of dollars. Maybe you destroy your voice. But it's not a job that repeats itself unless you get something else from a different project or something. And that is why most actors actually have to be a waiter in a restaurant or, do whatever else on the side to just be able to live from day to day, because voice acting really doesn't cut it. And this, the strike, I think this could actually help the actors to finally make a living of the job that they love doing and the job that is very important, in the media. Because I think people very much underappreciate voice actors. Without voice actors, none of the games would be the thing that they are.
Yeah. I agree 100%. So let's dive a bit deeper. So it's a good thing because what do you think is going to happen? Will the wages increase? Or will the amount of jobs increase? Like, what is the final outcome, the beneficial outcome of this strike, in your opinion?
I suppose SAG-AFTRA will have to do something about it sooner or later. If they don't, they're not going to have any working actors. And if they don't have actors, the projects can't, continue. So the wages will have to be raised, absolutely. That is how I see. And, I haven't really looked into this strike thing. I've noticed, some of the voice actors I follow on Instagram and social media who have been posting about this. But that's really all the things I know. But I understand them completely. If I was in their shoes, trying to make a living off of this, because they're professional, I can call myself a professional too, but I don't make a living off of it on a regular basis like they do. So they know better, their needs.
Right, got it. Yeah, I understand where you're coming from for sure. Because from what I gather, there was also a writer's strike some time ago. Then the actors were also on strike. Now the voice actors also joined in. Again, I'm not incredibly well versed in the subject, but that's from just what I gather. And I think it definitely should have a beneficial result. But I've on Instagram and in the news, I always read articles or see videos about actors or studio heads or casting directors, anybody in the entertainment industry, just talking about the fact that it's harder and harder to get jobs, and people are like getting huge credit lines just to kind of survive. And also AI kind of is a big factor in all this thing. So I want to discuss, your opinions in first of all about, the labor rights in video games compared to TV and film. Are the voice actors who work in mainly in voice acting, are their rights left behind compared to the film industry? Are they just waking up, or is it just a thing that kind of happened because of the fact that the video game industry back then was smaller than what it is today, and now since it's very popular, this strike is coming up, especially with voice actors that work in the game industry.
There's some differences in between the two. Voice actors, since they're mainly, working with their voices, and a lot of times it's 3-4 hour sessions inside the studio, a lot of times screaming and everything, that could really ruin someone's voice. Now, for actors on TV and, in the films, they also have something similar. They need to take constant breaks. I don't know, I think in between every 2 hour or so of recording, the breaks need to be made, because it's a regulation by SAG-AFTRA. And there's another thing. You get a minimum wage now, you know, like, I don't know, you work maybe 8 hours on the set a day, and you have to be paid a very certain amount. You cannot get paid underpaid, because that's the regulations. And if these projects or the companies who are developing these projects, if they were to not stick to these regulations, they could get fined, like really fined. I don't think any of those companies would want to go through that.
That's interesting. So the video game companies are slowly catching up to that.
They're trying.
Right.
But, you know, there's one more thing, especially for video games and voiceover. When you're in the studio, and usually the studio doesn't belong to the company, you know, that's studio time, and they pay thousands of dollars for, you know, per hour. And so that is why they're trying to get everything done as soon as possible. And let's say you have 4 or 5 pages of dialogue, you know, like pure dialogue, and then 2 more pages of just screaming and shouting, you know.
My God, I can't imagine that.
Let's say that's 3 to 4 hours of recording in the studio. That could be around $6,000 to $7,000 per actor.
My God.
Of course, they don't
okay.
get that money. I'm sure. I don't even know how much they could get. It varies, kind of. You know, also depends on the role. If it's a lead role or if it's a supporting role, it all depends on that. Or if you're just a civilian, you know, for example, it varies. It varies a lot. But they also have to take breaks in between the recording sessions.
Well, hopefully these regulations will be incorporated to, you know, all the actors that are working for video games, for sure. As you said, you know, screaming for, I mean, 2.5 pages is quite difficult thing. I can't even imagine doing that. So hopefully that's going to be a thing. I've recently saw a video actually of Neil Newbon talking about the fact that, you know, 10 years ago when he was, you know, in the industry working, I believe he said that he was working on some kind of role and acting, and then the director of the game or whoever came in and said, so when are the real actors going to come? Whereas he was the real actor. And today, you know, voice actors are, you know, at least from what I see, they're getting much more recognition, and they're becoming more and more famous. I mean, you can't compare probably any of them to the likes of Brad Pitt or whatnot. Okay, those are you know, Hollywood, you know, superstars. But I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if in near future it's going to get to that stage. But at least in the industry of video games, we do have quite a few, you know, those gaming superstars, which is great. And hopefully this trend is going to continue, and hopefully this strike is going to lead to, you know, a beneficial end result, hopefully. But thank you for sharing a bit of your knowledge and your opinions about that issue. It was very interesting for me to listen to that. I want to rewind back a little bit to what you said about your podcast. Now, we first connected because I liked your podcast, and you know, that's how I saw your work. You said, I'm not sure if I'm going to say it exactly correctly, back in the day when I was recording my podcast, you're speaking about it in the past tense. And I've also noticed that, you know, the episodes are not as frequent as before. Tell me what's going on with the podcast.
The podcast has been very slow, mainly because of, you know, my loss of motivation. It's hard to explain, kind of. You know, I've been doing it since October of 2020. That's when we started. That's when we released our first episode. And this has been going on for 4 years and 50 episodes. And, you know, I just really felt burnt out for the, you know, past few months, and I just feel like I can't keep doing this until I regenerate completely. Because I know people want new episodes, I know people want more guests, and we will get to that point once I feel like I can do this. But I need to tell you that even attending this interview I've had some second thoughts. Like, should I really do this? You know, like that's how much I feel the loss of motivation to do anything related to a podcast or interview.
Got it. Well, look, that's very understandable. I'm happy that you're saying that it's a temporary thing, because I think completely quitting it would be, not the best idea. Look, let me motivate you a little bit, right? So you've been doing it for 5 years. You've been at it for a while. You have 50 episodes. You've spoken to, one of the best voice actors, right? in the industry. I mean, you've even spoken with Neil Newbon, right? Look at him today.
I did.
You've spoken to him before he became the real deal. Okay? And you've had him on the podcast. That's insane. So, just get your energy back whenever you feel like it, and come at it from a different angle. How many subscribers do you have? Also, over 10,000, right? No.
I think we're 200 subscribers short from achieving 12,000.
There you go. 12,000, subscribers. These are, I'm a podcaster. You can call me a podcaster, I guess, as well. I've been at it not as long as you have been doing it, but I understand how difficult it is to do these episodes, and I get that you can get burnt out, but 12,000 subscribers is something. So, it's I'm very happy to know that you're going to return back to those 12,000 subscribers. I think you have to. You're doing so well.
I hope so. I wish to return one day because, I think I've built up a community that you don't see very often around in the Half-Life and the Valve community mainly. There have been some podcasts in the past, like I'm speaking 2008, like really back in the day. And, they've interviewed Valve developers, some of the voice actors I interviewed, and they've also just one day stopped and never made a comeback. I hope that's not going to be my case. I want it not to be because, it's still a podcast that I feel like I've had a hand in creating, and my co-host Sam should also be making a return as soon as he feels ready. He is actually in China at the moment. That's where he lives. Mm-hmm. So, things have been very busy for both of us. And,
right.
Just doing the podcast as well on the side, it just really, it was destroying us slowly. It may sound harsh, but I have to say it as it is. It was destroying us.
I can totally understand how a podcast can destroy you. Well, look, I'm trying to stay motivated here, and I'm trying to motivate you as well, but it's good. It's good. At least it's temporary. A break is always a necessary thing. Mm-hmm. As long as you come back and you come back stronger, that's going to be awesome. Now, just a quick question. Do you still, if you are to come, not if, but when you are to come back, do you still want to have it be related to, voice actors in, the Half-Life series or in the Valve community? Or, would you be okay with talking to voice actors in a more, broader perspective, perhaps?
I mean, I've interviewed voice actors before who weren't from Valve or Half-Life.
Yeah, I know, but mostly it's Valve related, right? From what I get.
Yeah, mostly. That's how we built up our image, I suppose.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a difficult question. I'd like to keep it as close to Valve as possible because I'd like to think that we are we are based on the Valve brand, and that's how we gained our viewers and fans, and I think that's the topic that would interest our viewers. Now, I may be wrong, because you can always experiment with something. You always do something else. You interview, me right now, voice actors, for example, and you interview game developers and something completely out of that as well.
Right. I think it depends on the perspective, because I came into this just trying to learn as much as I can about the industry in general, from A to Z. And I'm very interested in how it all works. So it's a different perspective, right? Mm-hmm. Whereas for you, it's a perspective of the actor, of the voice actor, of the person that brings the character to life, right? Of the emotion, of those iconic iconic voices that have stuck around with us from the Half-Life series or from Valve. So you're kind of celebrating their art, right? And that's that perspective, which is, a wonderful perspective to have. And you really need to be, I think it's such a benefit that you are in the industry and you're talking to the people who are also voice actors. I think there's a different connection with you and them than there would be, for example, if I were to talk to, a voice actor on a daily basis for the podcast, So I think there's a very special something there with, the direction that you went for sure.
My opinion on this is that I think anyone could be a podcaster, really.
Oh, for sure.
I think me and you are a very, very good examples of that. You just need to have a click. Like someone you want to meet and someone who you could potentially meet. Like someone, like not someone like Johnny Depp or Brad Pitt, like you've been saying, but someone who could be possible. And for me, that person was Ellen McLean, and I guess I just got lucky that I got to, talk to her. But I was really interested on her perspective, I wasn't the way you are, that I wasn't trying to learn about the industry. I just wanted to meet my idol. That's really what happened.
I love these, these little intricate stories of how things start. It's just so wonderful. But yeah, I really wish you slowly but surely come back to doing your podcast, because I definitely enjoyed the episodes. Look, you've also mentioned your music career, right? We spoke about that before. Your love for modern talking, for singing, but now it actually morphed into something a bit more serious, right? Could you just dive into that? Kind of what is this project of you dubbing the songs, and how did you get it? Who reached out to you? Why did they reach out? Let me know.
Absolutely. Well, I have a fan page of Modern Talking on TikTok where I have almost 300,000 followers. And
wait, excuse me. Can I just wait? You have a fan page that you made of Modern Talking.
Yes.
And on that page, you have 300,000 followers?
Well, almost. We are at 280K at the moment.
Oh my God! I had no idea about this.
We didn't talk about this in our previous.
How would I even
interview.
know? Oh my God!
I thought it'd be a surprising thing to mention.
That's great. Anyways, well, you have to send me the link. But yeah, sure, go ahead.
Yes, I will. And I've been uploading. Well, you knew I was singing at the time. Well, yeah. I've been uploading short videos with the original group. Well, like lip syncing to my voice. That's how I would, translate it. So it was me singing, but the viewer has seen the actual singers as if they were performing, but it was my voice.
Right. So you removed the original singer's voice from the audio.
Yeah, and I've put up videos as like an a cappella. So there was no, instrumental in the background. And so
I got it.
Some people, some talented people heard this, and they thought that they could really use a voice like this in their Modern Talking covers, because they didn't want to reuse just the original backing track and, so on and so forth. So they reached out to me on Discord, actually, and, they've just told me that, they're aspiring music creators and composers, and they like to make covers of Modern Talking. And they asked me if I could record vocals, for their Modern Talking covers. And I was like, sure, because, I always wanted to do something like this. And so, we're pretty much on the right path to get these on Spotify sooner or later. We also have a lead singer. I only do backing vocals and a choir section after the chorus. And, I'm really enjoying that.
That's awesome, man. Yeah, definitely. And the voice fits right in, but I'm still surprised by your fan page. That is insane. Almost 300,000 followers. That's just wow.
Yeah, we are.
Do you think of
Yeah, go on. Sorry.
I was gonna say I don't know the names, or I forgot the names of the singers of Modern Talking, but do you think they're aware of this fan page?
I know they've seen some of the videos I did. That's what I know. And
Hey, that's
there's been a
big deal.
couple of times when they, shared these videos on their own pages too. So
Hey, that's a big deal, man. That's cool. Wow. Okay. All right.
I know they're aware, but I know they don't know who I am because I never mentioned to anyone. Like I want people not to know that it's me behind the page. I was always going
Okay.
after that. I mean, I've revealed it now, but until now, no one knew it. And
Got it.
I'm also on Facebook. We have almost 60K there. And
Wow.
on YouTube, we have 263,000.
Hold
Yeah.
on a minute. So you have 263,000 subscribers on YouTube.
Yes, that's also a fan
Almost
page.
300,000 followers on Instagram. And 60,000 followers on Facebook.
Yep.
And I find out about this only now. That is crazy. Wow.
Well-
Well, first of all, congrats. That's a huge achievement. Well done. Wow.
I didn't think it'd be an interesting topic to, mention because,
No, come on. That's really interesting.
I'm just uploading short edits, that I make. And I never wanted people to know that it was me. I was mainly doing it because I enjoyed the music of modern talking. And, I was thinking, what if maybe I could have something off of it? Not money-wise, but, just seeing the followers come through, that feels good. And
that's such an achievement.
I've had an Instagram page before where I had 20K, but that got banned for unknown reasons. I never really found out. Instagram never told me why. So
Wow.
I don't have an Instagram now, only on TikTok, YouTube, and Facebook.
It's a big deal, man. It's a very big deal to have such a large audience on so many platforms. Following the work of modern talking and of what you're doing. That's just crazy. Wow, well done. I didn't know that. That's really, really cool. That's
Thank you.
Really,
That's nice
really
of you
nice.
to
And
say.
I'm really happy that that's slowly manifesting into something a bit more tangible with you actually working with somebody and actually recording these songs. And again, if they go to Spotify, I mean, imagine millions of people will be able to hear all these, recreations, let's say, right? The songs will be recreated by these new voices.
Yes,
That's
I
really
mean,
cool.
I'm looking forward to what's going to happen about that. So, yeah.
Is it a paid gig for you?
No, I'm doing it as a hobby.
Okay.
I never trained as a singer. I never did. I suppose, my training of voiceover for the past 5 years somehow helped me with that,
Yeah,
maybe,
yeah.
the voice control and all that.
I want to, talk about AI, which is a bit of a dark subject, especially when it concerns, voice acting in music. And again, I'm speaking to all my guests about this subject because, well, it's trending and it's important, I think, to share as much knowledge and opinions on it as possible in order for us to be able to formulate, a concrete opinion for ourselves. Since you're a voice actor and you're, in the industry, I wonder if you're more concerned about AI now than you were a year ago.
You know what? I'm not concerned at all. I actually think it could have an ethical use.
Interesting.
In my opinion, AI is advanced, of course, but I don't think it will ever be able to replicate something that we do. What voice actors, actually, in my opinion, because our voices are just so unique in their own way. And, we have people like Troy Baker, and we have people like Neil Newbon, like you've said. We have people like Ashley Birch, and many, many other voice actors who are just very talented. And I don't think AI will ever be able to replace these unique voices with, AI-generated voice lines and emotion.
Right. No, I can totally agree about the fact that, the original voices are irreplaceable. And if the project is big enough, serious enough, and if the vision for the project is, ambitious, then that project will probably steer towards real actors and real emotions. And
Yeah.
these actors, they bring, yeah.
I'd like to tell you an example of what would be an ethical use of AI in voiceover.
That'd be interesting, yeah.
Let's say, you know the late James Earl Jones, the voice of Darth Vader in the Star Wars movies. Yeah, he passed away. And now there's been talks, well, actually, they've brought his voice back for one of the spin-offs or something. I'm not really aware of the franchise, but I know they've brought his voice back by an actor doing the voiceover, but then they've put that through an AI synthesizer, so it made it sound like it was James Earl Jones, I think. And there was another use of AI where James Earl Jones, he was old at this time when he was already recording it. I think he was about 80-something, and of course, he did Star Wars in the 70s. And so his voice has changed. So what they did with AI is that they made his voice sound younger, like he used to sound back in the day. That's also a great use of AI, in my opinion. So I think there's ways that we could make use of AI in a way that we just preserve something that used to be very good.
Yeah, definitely. That's a very interesting point. Like, preserve, I think, is the right word there, because you know how movie studios can sometimes try to, you know, over exaggerate a certain thing. So you might like what I'm trying to say is, if the sample of his voice is recreated with AI and that sample is accessible at any time by, you know, a certain studio, and then they make, you know, sequel after sequel after sequel after sequel using that AI generated voice, that's gonna, you know, at the end of the day, that's also not very good. I think it's very important to use it subtly, right? Maybe, you know, once in a while to kind of help people remember the voice and who this person was, and to just not overuse it, right?
As far as I'm aware, they've actually contacted James' family after his passing to ask if they would be okay, you know, with using his voice. And, you know, there's still things called residuals. And so the family would get that money, since Earl was already, you know.
That's a very good thing. Okay, so the family is getting the money for the AI voice that is being used on these films, basically.
Yes.
Okay, wow. That's really cool. That's interesting. Okay, that's an ethical point. Let me ask you this. There have been games, large games, some of which came out recently, where real actors perform the role, but then, you know, I would assume the situation might have been that they forgot to ask the actor to say a line, or maybe they thought of a different line later and the actor was not able to say that line. But tiny, you know, lines have been actually recorded with AI. So 90%, 99% of what a certain character says is the real actor. But then 1% is those, you know, few lines that have been missed or forgotten or whatever. Also, some major characters, you know, NPCs who are just, you know, not important, their voices have been recorded, from what I gather, around 60 to 70% by real actors, and the rest with AI. What are your thoughts on that specifically?
This is, like, I'll be honest with you, this is my first time hearing about this. I don't know which games did that. I have heard of, for example, in Half-Life mods, where they would have an actor record the lines, and then they would put it through AI to make it sound like what the original actor sounded like. You know, to kind of stay close to the actual voices. I know they would do that, but knowing that these games were free, or, well, mods, you know, they were free and they were fan projects, I don't see anything wrong with that. I know people are gonna hate me for saying this, because everyone thinks we should give, you know, the chance, you know, for real voice actors to show their skills. But at the end of the day, it's still gonna have to be a voice actor who's gonna have to record these lines first, so they can put it through the AI to make it sound good. So it's still acting one way or another.
Here's what I'm very interested in. Look, so I grew up in the 90s. You're way younger than me, but I'm sure you've seen video of games from the 90s, right? I'm pretty sure. So my question would be, video games in the 90s were voiced by real actors as well, for the most part. Now, were they very professional actors or not? This I don't know. Today when you hear games or actors performing in games, it's, absolute wonderful performances with a lot of emotion, a lot of dynamism. And it's just, a wonderful, wonderful experience that they're providing for the player. If you look at the games from the 90s, right, like for the PS1 and whatnot, I mean, it's so goofy. It's so goofy. Like the voice acting is so goofy. It's lifeless. It's just really monotone. It's lifeless. But although I know that some of these voice actors are great actors and are very professional actors, would you have an opinion or an idea as to why that is the case?
Of course. What I really think was going on, especially in the 90s, is voiceover wasn't a thing that all actors were doing at the time. It was a very new thing. Of course, there's been actors who have been doing just ADR, which means that they were like dubbing over, for example, Spanish films, to English, or like any films from different languages to English. So that was a thing, but it wasn't actual film actors doing that. And so, once voiceover got started in the 90s, and I would bring up Resident Evil, the first one, the game, as an example, the voice acting over there was absolutely terrible. And
it has a
these
vibe
actors,
to it, though.
These actors work to this, well, I can't say that for sure, but as far as I'm aware, if they're still actors, then they're probably working, and they're probably much more better now than they were back then. But what I want to get to is voiceover was a very new thing at the time, and especially voiceover in video games. Only thing I can imagine is that, maybe the direction wasn't right.
That's an interesting point. So
That
what
is
you're
my
saying is
assumption.
that the actor could act, obviously. But you're saying that the message was being delivered to them not in the right way as to how to do the whole thing.
I think that could be a thing, because, for example,
Interesting.
Duke Nukem also was pretty goofy.
Oh, well, goofy, but that was a direction, and he was.
But that was much. That was good, yeah. Or for example, Half-Life. That also came out in '98, and the direction was on point, and the acting was good.
I agree. Yeah.
So
which game I'm talking about as well. I'm sorry to interrupt your train of thought there. So we mentioned Resident Evil. I'm not sure if you know the game called Siphon Filter.
I never heard of that.
No. All right. Well, it's basically how would you say, like a spy agent shooter that came out for the for the PlayStation 1 called Siphon Filter. Now the actors are actually great in it. I believe the main actor of Logan, the main character is called Logan. He's called, I think, John Chacon or Cajon. I'm terribly sorry for butchering your name, but he's a fabulous, great voice actor. And but all the other actors around him, right, just so goofy. And I think it's the direction. You're very correct. So sorry to stop you from your train of thought. You can continue.
Yeah, I'd like to expand upon that, because the direction could be bad, but then again, there could be actors who can't take direction well. There's also things like that, because there's directors who tell you to be more arrogant, be more sarcastic, be more aggressive. And sometimes they tell you be in between.
Oh my God.
Now, how do you go in between? Now, and
You tell me. You're
that
a
is
professional here.
that is difficult. That is
Wow,
very
yeah.
difficult. And, you know, like, again, studio time, that's money. So
Yeah.
sometimes they just gotta go with the takes they have so they can move on to the next line. Because look at the pages. We have 3 more pages. We've already been here 2 hours. And damn, how much we're gonna pay for the studio at the end of the day? So,
My God.
yeah.
My God. No, really, you know, when you get to know the intricacies of how, you know, voiceover and acting works, you know, that's a lot of pressure, a lot of nerves actually so not only as an actor do you need to be working hard in order to try to get yourself work, but you need to be working hard while working hard in order to pay attention to things like, you know, that studio time, it wastes money and in between and this and that. And you got to be ready for all sorts of comments like be in between. My goodness. Have you had experiences like that?
Not me. Luckily, I didn't.
Luckily, yeah.
But I know people who have. And, you know, as an actor, you just want to go into the studio, get your, you know, lines done, appear in the game, you know, don't get cut out of it because that happens too. And, well, of course, get your check. And you want them to hire you again. So you want to do your best and, you know, work with the directors in a way that they're going to hire you again later on for another project. And, you know, there's times when you don't hear what they're saying because the director and the sound engineer are speaking, you know, with each other. And you're behind the glass in the studio and you see them talking and you only hope that they're not talking something bad about you. But yeah, I tend to be an optimist and, you know, I always try to do my best in every possible situation. And if I was told, if I was told to be in between, it'd be very difficult, but I'd try.
Well, yeah, for sure. You do your best to get it done. Oh, that's interesting, man. It gives me I'm all agitated now just thinking about how difficult all that might be. Ronald, I got to say it was a pleasure to catch up with you after a year. I got to say also that I'm very happy with the progress that you made and the new gigs that you got. I'm going to say the same thing as I said last year, that I am very much looking forward to the wonderful roles and the wonderful gigs that you're going to get in the future. You're still very young. How old? 19 now, probably, right?
Yes, that's correct.
All right, a year older. Perfect. 19 only years old. And I think the career is only beginning. And I'm sure that, next year we can catch up again and see where you are. But again, want to wish you a lot of luck in your journey. I think luck will definitely play a big factor because you got to be at the right place at the right time, talk to the right person, hope that they're in a good mood and whatnot. And wishing you a lot of luck. And, I want you to, achieve all your goals slowly but surely. It was, again, a pleasure to connect with you. And thank you so much for your time and for talking with me.
Well, thank you so much for having me back for a second time. It was a pleasure, and of course, I hope to stay in touch, and, I just need to say that keep doing what you love with this podcast, because, I've seen your other episodes and the Metal Gear stuff, and I just must say that your videos are getting better and better in quality, and, the editing, I really enjoy watching them, and...
Thank you.
If there's something I could say to your viewers, if you allow me...
Of course, with pleasure.
Just like last year, I find it very important to recreate the scene, the famous scene.
Go for it. I'm excited. Let's go.
Keep listening to Pixel Fabula. If you don't, I will find you.
Absolutely flawless, man. We should put that and keep that as a tradition. Thank you so much, Ronald. Always a pleasure, man, to talk to you.